Hello, this is Joanna Streeter with New World Encounters, and I have today with me Julia Shalet. And hello, Julia. It's very nice to have you here with us today.
Hello, thank you.
You call yourself Product Doctor. I would like to ask you to present yourself, tell us a little bit more about yourself, and where does this name Product Doctor come from?
Okay, so I really like this question because I started out my career really solving problems. So I started out with a big mobile network that had just launched the first big consumer mobile offering in the UK, right? So before that, it was only business people who had mobiles. And there were so many problems with this massive big launch that they needed some kind of troubleshooting. And because I had a law degree, I ended up sorting all these problems out, which meant that I became a process improver. Okay, so I was fixing and finding the source of problems and trying to improve the situation. And from there, in the same organization, I moved into product. Okay, so you were given a product to manage. I think my first product was voicemail, mobile voicemail. And I sort of moved along from there. So I was always a product person. And someone said to me the other day, "Oh, you did product when it wasn't cool to be product," right? So, and I look around me now, and particularly in your industry as well, and I see that everybody's being renamed as a product person. But I was product before it was cool, so it's quite fun. So I ended up managing a very large product portfolio. It was around, it was hundreds of £1 million annual revenue at the corporate, at the mobile corporate. And I left and went on my own and started doing some other stuff. And somebody I used to work with said to me, "So what do you do?" And I tried to explain that, I was obsessed with problems and trying to find solutions to problems that fitted the problem, right? And not wasting time. I mean, all this wasted energy setting up processes that don't work and all these things. This was what bugged me at the time and still does. And I was trying to explain, and it was so long-winded. And I said, oh, look, if you gave me a permanent job, I'd be a product director. She said, "Sorry, a product doctor?" And I went, "Hang on a minute, product doctor? It's brilliant." Because product people, they're obsessed with the product life cycle, right? So the life cycle does this. You have an idea, you take it through introduction, it grows, you manage it while it's at the top, and then you think, what shall I do? It's kind of coming down, and then do I kill it or do I launch a new product? That's the product life cycle. It feels like a life, right? It's a life cycle. So a doctor seems a great analogy. So we sort of bring new products into the world, but we also kill them at the end, so this is where the name came from.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia. Actually, now I'm reading your book, and may I call myself your patient? So, yes. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your book, and where did the idea came from to talk about this?
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So I was doing over the years, I have sort of worked with many, many new ideas. Okay. So from bringing an old sort of market in South London back to life, a beautiful Art Deco indoor market, which was struggling. So that was the product, if you like, and I'm bringing it back to life. Or I'm working for a Web 2.0 startup and I'm trying to help them make their first million. And, there's all these new ideas coming up. And then I'm working with other people, and I'm working with startups and students with ideas and corporate product managers with ideas. And all the time, I find myself kind of creating a process, if you like. And my process is always to go and speak to people and make sure the problem exists and make sure that there is a solution opportunity, right? So look at the market, look at what they're already doing to solve the problem, is it good enough or not? Because if it's not good enough, there's an opportunity for you to play, right? So the biggest mistakes people make are, yeah, the problem doesn't exist. So I had the problem, right? So there must be a problem. And that's so typical. You know, I can see one person with the problem. No, you've got to find a lot of people, with enough people with the problem. Secondly, that there are existing solutions that already do the job for them. And thirdly, that they have no intention of taking the action that you need them to. So it's not something they'd pay for, or it's not something they download, or it's not something they're going to integrate into their business, because they've got to change the way they work. They've got to change their systems. It's not going to happen. The problem isn't big enough to take your action that you need, right? And this just keeps coming up and kept coming up. And I thought, right, the first thing we've got to do is go and talk to customers or target users and go and check those 3 issues, right? Go and check whether they exist. Because if they don't exist, you'll build something that nobody wants. So the book came about because I'd kind of written this in practice, and I have lots of tips and techniques for going and speaking to people and trying to find out if that situation, if those answers are presenting an opportunity to you or not. So that's how the book came about. And I was lucky enough to have a fantastic sponsor at Pearson who suggested, I had already sort of had post-it notes on the wall, but he suggested that they'd be very interested in publishing the book. So that was fantastic. But I call it the book that wrote itself, right? So through 25 years of experience of doing this stuff and helping other people, it kind of wrote itself.
That's very interesting. Actually, what I love about your book, it's not only the practical examples that you give, but also the templates. Yeah, so that people can use templates for all the steps in the process. Would you like to describe a little bit the method that you use, because it has a few steps, I think 7. Would you like to talk about that?
Sure, it has 7 steps, and it takes you from the very first step, which is making sure that you have a hypothesis to test, right? So any idea you have, anything you think that you might be wasting time or money on, you turn into what they call a testable hypothesis, right? And to my mind, there are 4 elements to that hypothesis. The first thing is, what's your goal? Like, what are you actually trying to achieve? And you'd be surprised how many people are not clear on the goal, right? Is it revenue? Might not be. Is it sort of market position? Is it some press and some media and some coverage? But what's the actual goal? And you have to be really clear on that up front. Then you ask yourself, you know, who are you solving the problem for, right? What's the problem and who are you solving it for? And you have to be able to find a problem, okay, maybe a need or desire, but a problem, need or desire is ideal, right? So you've got to find that and find who the problem, who you're solving it for, who are the beneficiaries, who are the people who you think are going to take the action, which is the next bit of it. So what's the action? And that step 1 is so important and actually could take the longest time. You've got to work out that there is value for you to create. If you're not creating any value, you're going to produce something that people don't want or need. And so from there, we go through 7 steps, which any researcher, right, would understand. So any person who goes and interviews people would understand how to do that. So from there, you're creating you're understanding the biggest risks, right? And you turn your risks into a set of questions that you want to ask in step 1, step 2, step 3, that you want to ask in step 4 to a specific group of people. And at every one of these stages, by the way, there are many, many pitfalls and many potential mistakes you can make. So even in recruiting the right people, you could find the wrong people. The whole thing is a waste of time. Your whole process could be a waste of time if you're talking to the wrong people. And then you want to work out how you're going to measure what they tell you. And then you go and interview them finally, and you start with 5, as I've said before, and maybe you move to another 5, but you start with 5 carefully recruited. And from there, you ask yourself the question, you stop. Should I carry on? Should I carry on and make changes? Maybe I've heard things I didn't realize, or should I stop? And it's so important to allow yourself to stop. And at this point, spent very little. You might have paid 5 or 10 people for their time, 30, 40 pounds, euros, whatever, just to speak to me, have a video conversation, for example. It's as simple as that, but that's really the only spend other than your time. Think about the amount of people who spend those 2-3 weeks giving money to developers and, you know, really trying to develop their brand. Oh, people love to develop their brand before they've tested their idea. You know, it can be incredibly expensive. So you take these little simple steps. It's just customer interviews, but it's written from the point of view of experience, of knowing how you can get the wrong answers if you're not very, very careful. And you have to strive for neutrality throughout.
Wow. Sounds like a very good plan. Julia, we are going to, actually at New World Encounters, we are going to use your test method for the next product. What I wanted to ask you is, you work a lot with a lot of organizations, and I would be very curious to know more about which are the main pain points organizations have when they start working with product development.
So one of the biggest issues organizations have is that they're trying to keep their existing business going. Okay, so they have existing products, existing product lines. They've got to keep it going. But they know that they need to innovate and they know they need to stay ahead of the game, but they find it very difficult to balance the two actions. Okay, so we talk about having a portfolio within your product suite. So you have your core product, which is your kind of, this is my daily business. This is where I'm, you know, putting food on the table. This is the stuff that's paying me at the moment. That's your core business. And you might spend 70% of your time, 80% of your time managing your core business. Then you have adjacent opportunities. Adjacent opportunities are taking an existing product into a new market, or you're taking an existing market into a new product, right? So you can have it either way around. You're opening a new market or you're opening a new product, but it's not what they call transformational innovation, right? Because you're working with something you've already got, you're just pushing the boundary. And then you have transformational, which is, these are completely new ideas. These are the biggest risk. This is where you really want to be using being very careful about where you put your resources, and really with all of those areas, you need to test your ideas before you invest, right? But with transformational, it's really the unknown. And so it's really important for businesses, and I help businesses to get that balance right, and then to make sure that they resource appropriately, right? So you know that, let's say 80% of your resource goes on your core business. Let's say you put, 15%, you can change these numbers into your adjacent opportunities. And then on your transformational, the remainder. So you're not, overloading yourself in the wrong area. But that's one of the most difficult things that organizations have to deal with. And I have a whole raft of ways, which I teach also at the Chartered Institute of Marketing, the CIM. And so I'm working with product managers there and helping them from the inside to kind of change the culture and the decision-making processes in their organizations. So it's a big problem.
Maybe for our last question, I would like to ask you for a piece of advice for our audience. What would be your advice to companies that are new to product development and want to start with it? How should they start?
So I think I would probably answer this in terms of mindset. Okay, so I suppose the first thing I would say is, you're going to fail. And Jeff Bezos said recently, not that he's a hero of mine, but I'll quote him. He said, if you're not failing, then you're not trying enough, right? So you are going to fail. Given you're going to fail, do it quickly, do it cheaply, okay? And what underpins that is making sure that you test before you invest. right? So be prepared to test out quickly, cheaply, look very carefully at what you're trying to achieve, write your hypotheses, and really test those things, those assumptions that you're carrying with you before you start investing money. But be prepared to start kind of quite broad. So you might want to have a number of things that you're testing against, you know, and then you'll see which ones to take forward. So I'm always about anti-waste. So that's a sort of approach, if you like, to stop you wasting time, money, and effort.
Thank you, Julia. That was really very insightful. Test before you invest. I think this will stay our mantra for product development. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you.